Hello and welcome to Truth Talk Podcast. We are Rob and Shara Mckee joining Pastor Walker to discuss the latest and most cutting-edge leadership strategies for you and your church.
That's the greatest intro we've ever had on the podcast. We could end right now, and it's been a success.
You can't really use that. It's
yes,
hilarious.
That's already in.
Okay.
Well, we're so thrilled that you're here, and you guys have just poured in so much to Truth Church this weekend, and I feel a little bad. This is going to post some morning, and people's going to be like, oh, cool, this is a morning post. But you guys have been just here all weekend pouring in and talking, and it's
been a
like
blast.
It's like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and we're still going.
Right. Well, when you're doing what you love, it doesn't feel like work.
No.
So we've enjoyed it.
Wonderful.
It's been fun.
And you did so much for the music team and your preaching, and then you guys poured into our leadership. I just love the flow of your burden. It's good.
Well, we love your hunger to learn, and we share such a common passion for these types of things. And it's refreshing to see another church with a leadership mindset that wants to grow and challenge their church's paradigm and culture to stretch and go beyond what's always been. Because what's the book? What took you there, what got you here won't get you there.
Yes. Right.
So it's always about looking at what's next and how can we grow and be better.
Yep. And the pursuit of excellence is a great way to honor our great God, who is the most excellent.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So we posted that you guys were here, right, on IG.
Okay.
And my phone blows up. And Messenger, which I don't check, somebody else checks for me. It is just like, brrr, you got to have them on the podcast. And then the next thing they wanted is so many people messaged, ask them for a few book recommendations. So, Sister Mckee, why don't you give us a few recommendations?
Right. I have quite a few on my list, but I always start with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, although I feel like many people have read that because it's been around a while. But it has been so impactful to me personally. So that's by Stephen Covey. Also, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. It's got a lot of really practical tools that you can use when dealing with people and having coaching conversations, confrontation conversations, etc. And then probably the last one I'll give before I turn it over to Dr. Husband over there is Predicting Personality, because we're huge DISC personality people. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this one really explains it in a easy to read, one take kind of way. So Predicting Personality, I don't even know who it's by, but it's don't judge me, but it has a big crystal ball in the front. But we don't really believe in that. It's just the idea is if you can learn all about this, you can almost predict a person's personality and adjust your approach to them based on maybe the way they dress, their body language, their tone of voice. And we're in the people business. Yeah. And so when it comes to the choice of Bible study that you're going to give, the approach for witnessing, how you approach someone in the altar, all of these types of things can be done more wisely if you have an understanding.
Online communication as well.
Of their personality. Yeah. So I like that book a lot. So take it away, Doc.
Well, I would probably start with Go Big. I love a great book on church growth, general church growth concepts by Bill Easom, church growth guy. And then another book that I've obviously promoted a lot is Culture Wins by William Vanderbloemen. And he is a Texas guy, but he's got a lot of stuff on establishing, especially for leaders, ministry leaders, establishing values and culture within your ministry department, and then how to protect that and how important it is that you protect it. Great stuff on culture. And then Dan and Chip Heath wrote a book called Switch. Not a Christian book, but it's a tremendous book about how change occurs, even when change is difficult. Research heavy. It does discuss a lot of case studies of both political change, cultural change in business, even in social services, how if you're trying to, for example, reduce childhood obesity, or maybe you're trying to, reduce the death rates of infants, how countries have addressed that and using change, and how change happens, and how you can take those principles and apply them back to business and to church. I think it's a tremendous book, very helpful, called Switch.
Okay.
Good book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If you're in the room with you guys, and that room can be large. It could be the church we were in today. You guys have such an effervescent personality, like it just bubbles out of you.
Aww.
And it's easy for me to grasp your passions. But sometimes in a podcast, you have listeners, you have people. In just brief, and then we'll move on. If someone did not know Shara Mckee, what is her passion?
Believe it or not, I love people. Actually, the thing I love most about ministry is people, and the thing that has challenged me the most is people. But I am passionate about leadership principles and strategies, and also psychology. I love to integrate psychology and biblical principles together to give a deeper understanding of why the Word of God is infallible, and it is the ultimate, okay. But when you have these studies and research and neuroscience that further explains and reveals the awesomeness and intentionalness, if that's a word, of God, and how the more we learn of that, the better we can understand and value each other and discover one another's gifts. That's a huge passion of mine, is to help discover people's giftings and talents and passions and leverage those for the kingdom. Very passionate about that.
That's awesome.
I think leadership, church growth, I love it. I mean, we both have masters in leadership, so obviously we talk about those principles quite a bit. But I think beyond that, just seeing people change, transformation, I think is obviously a big part of every minister's life. It's something I think about a lot. Just engaging people where they are and really challenging them to change, I think is what I'm most passionate about.
Of course, we're passionate about our family and the gospel and
Sure.
kingdom.
Oh yeah, those kids
Without-
too.
Specifically,
We have some kids somewhere. I don't know where they are tonight. But
Without saying, yeah, I get that. I love your love for excellence, your pursuit of excellence, and I'm always a bit baffled by people who stagnate. Because to me, and I hate the comparisons with the sports world and all that jazz, but I was reading the Wall Street Journal the other day, and I don't follow sports, but Wall Street Journal had this Corey Seager on the front page, and talked about his pursuit of excellence. He rebuilds his swing every day. It takes him 7 hours.
Whoa.
And I'm thinking to myself, man, I know so many leaders that just operate on autopilot. They're living on yesterday's victories, and they've got a word from God, but it's like way in the rearview mirror, right? You guys have this freshness that it's like you're still learning, and I love that, right? It's so refreshing to meet people who are saying, "Watch us grow. We're kind of working on the engine as we fly."
Sure.
And it's beautiful.
That's a great analogy.
It's refreshing.
Actually. Working on the engine as we fly.
Yeah.
That feels right. Well, actually, it feels like the more I learn, the more I discover I don't know.
Yep.
Like I'll unlock these whole areas and genres of thought and research and ideas that I didn't know I didn't know.
Right.
And so even though it feels like you should be attaining something, you realize how much more there is to learn. And I think I feel very challenged and encouraged by that. So I love to learn.
Yeah. I think, anything in extreme usually becomes damaging to an organization. Even the pursuit of excellence, if we're not careful, it can lock us down in that we never try anything new because we're afraid it would not be as good as what we're currently doing. And so we can become stagnated with excellence. I think maybe even a better word is a pursuit of risk.
Okay.
And I think we've gotten away from risk in our movement. And I think as an organization, organizational life cycles, I think is really telling that you can hit a point where you become comfortable and basically risk becomes something you did years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew 25, I think, is where Jesus tells the parable of the servants that are given different amounts of talents. And the one that receives 1 talent, he buries his talent in the sand, and Jesus rebukes him, calls him lazy, calls him evil. But if you step back and consider that the guy that had 5 talents, if he lost all 4, he still has 1 to invest. He could gain the 4 back and even have a profit. The guy that has 2, he has 1 to lose. He could invest the other one and still, it comes back. But the guy that had 1, if he lost it, it's game over.
Yeah.
And yet that his fear of risk, it almost seems that in this parable, Jesus is saying the fear of risk is sin in the eyes of God. And I think God really wants pastors, church leaders, to not just be open to risk, but to embrace it. Yeah. And we've got to be willing to step out of the boat of comfort, whatever it is we've done. And that can be sometimes perceived as a pursuit of excellence, but I think it's a pursuit of the next thing that God has for us. We've got to be committed to, of course, our values and the things that ground us, but on the other side of that, we need to always stretch ourselves towards the new thing that God wants to do in our life, and not be satisfied with 250 member church or a successful event, but how can we make this better? What can we do? What's something new that we could implement that would take it to the next level, I think.
That's awesome.
And so,
yeah,
I think.
Let me ask you guys. You guys can answer this together. You can answer it individually. It doesn't matter to me. But I really, you're so close, and you guys have a great leadership team, and I think you can teach through your leadership experiences. So let me ask you, what would you do different if you knew what you know now? If you could start all over?
Wow.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is I think I would have gone back to school sooner. Because it forced me into a lane of discipline and focus that didn't come to me naturally. Right. But we've often said that we wished we had tuned into the power of personality profiles sooner, so that we could have avoided some misunderstandings, maybe some offenses, some families that... Because when we came in, not to reference a godly song, but like a wrecking ball. We didn't really worry about people's aversion to change or their need for stability, and that's a core need for some people.
Absolutely,
and it brings anxiety and fear. We just go in and start changing things, or his directness or my follow through struggles. I've become very open with what my weaknesses are with people, so they can adjust their expectations of me and not take things personally. Yeah. Like if I don't text you back, please don't ever think it's because I don't love you. Just know that I squirreled on you. Yeah. And it's okay to say, hey, did you see this? And I'm not going to be offended by that. I'm going to say, oh, thank you for bringing it back to my attention, and just sharing those things. But I wish we could go back and know what we know about those basic personality types, even in helping marriages, parenting, approaches in our relationships with people. I think we could have avoided some things that went wrong.
Yeah, I think we have to forgive people for not being like us. And
that's good.
And so, that I think we drove a lot of people away that were so adversely different. We're both upper quadrant personalities. I'm very
not like we're uppity, but he's talking about the disc grid where the D and I are on top.
Yes,
just for your information.
I'm a D driver, risk taker, but sometimes I can take too many risks, and I don't take time to stabilize the environment. Okay. And it can drive some C's. The contemplators and the slower pace, the analysts, those kind of folks. I can drive them crazy because I'm always focused on the next thing, and sometimes I have to be pulled back into the present and kind of bring some stability. And so I think if we had to do it again, that would definitely be one of the things. Is have a better understanding of personalities and how that informs leadership styles, and what people feel as a fulfilling ministry. Sometimes we stuck people into ministries that they weren't really suited for, and it burned them out.
I also, one more thing, wish we had been more intentional about reaching out to like-minded people, not just people who happen to be in our circle because of default, maybe because of organization or region, but though because we went, I think there's some lonely years where I thought, does anybody think like us?
Right.
Do they have the same drive or priorities, or and finding those, seeking out and cultivating those relationships intentionally. I would strongly recommend that for younger ministries, finding people not just that happen to be there.
Yeah.
Or not just local, they can be across the country.
And we, I'm sure we can confuse people, because to us, kingdom-minded, like-minded, whether, regardless of organization or affiliation, as long as, of course, the core
Right.
values. I think you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But that the Lord would, and we prayed, but it was not early on. It was, I didn't even realize there were other, I was very sheltered. I didn't come from a preacher's home. And I was just like, wow, I wish we had done this earlier, built almost like a coalition
Right.
of like-minded people.
Yeah, friends.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
it transcends the clubs.
Yeah.
It
100%.
transcends,
Yes.
the kind of default program you go to, and you're looking for people that are more connected to your vision, your like-mindedness,
Right.
as opposed to limiting myself with here's just who's in the club.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, those friendships have been the lifeblood of us. As she said, we actually made that statement after some very dark days. Whichever pastor has them, I know. You feel completely isolated, feel like, everybody's against you. And we made the statement, we need to identify some people across the country. Stop looking, at a few people that maybe reject you or they don't care for you or your church. Find people across the country that we can connect with intentionally and just build relationships that are encouraging to us.
See, and I can appreciate just both of your attitude is with such intentionality, and that's beautiful to me. So talking about people and those people, let me ask you both, did you have mentors in the past, people whose fingerprints is on your life?
Well,
Looking at Rob Mckee, whose fingerprint is on that?
there were several men, I think, that stepped into my life at significant moments, and I adapted certain things. They just impressed me, certain aspects of their ministry. I've always been high energy, moving, going all the time. And one of the first things I noticed about Brother Johnny Godare was just his drive. I love that, man. It connected with me. I would see him. I started my ministry preaching on the streets of Houston, preaching to the drunks coming out of clubs. I didn't have a pulpit. I'm not from a preacher's home either. Had no opportunity, so we just sort of made our own and went out and preached to all the drunks. And so seeing Brother Godare's drive, evangelistic passion, we would walk into a restaurant and I'm going to teach you Bible study next week. Hey, listen, you promised me last week you were coming to church. Very vocal. I love that. And so that really impacted me. His ministry really hit home. And I had the opportunity to preach for him quite a bit before I was married. I think he was a big thing in my life. Of course, Dr. James Hughes in Houston, just the stability that he brought, he helped me temper down my personality a little bit, so I wasn't so high-strung, and kind of gave me some stability. I think he was a big influence in my life. Of course, Brother Kilgore, when I married her, Brother Kilgore told me, he said, I'll give you my blessing to marry Shara, Gail, if under one condition, that I become your pastor. And so I had been evangelizing for 8 years at that point, so I needed a pastor, and so he became my pastor, and until the day he died. His kindness, his compassion, his love for people, the genuine way that he would connect with people one-on-one, it humbled me because it was so different than what I'm used to. I mean, I could talk to people, but he was genuinely concerned about people and checked on them, and that was something that did not come naturally to me. So he really sort of convicted me and challenged me at the same time. And caring for ministers, he was just a master, as was, of course, Brother Von Morton. I've mentioned this before. I really don't know if he fully understands the impact he made just as a young minister, not really even knowing me, but just taking time to invest in me. And he really made an impact in my life. I mean, I've got a long list. Robert Baglin in California, just a person that was very kind. But Brother Jimmy Jones, not the one that handed out Kool-Aid, but another one, another
Thank
pastor.
you for that distinction.
Yes, related to the shoemakes, but tremendous man who took time to talk to me and treated me like an equal, even though I was far from his equal. I just had never experienced that.
Amazing. The Shara Mckee that sits in front of me today, whose fingerprints?
I always feel kind of scared and sad when people ask me that question because I don't have a concrete answer. I used to crave and long for a mentor, somebody to take me under their wing. Sister Kilgore had a huge influence on me as a young person growing up there. Again, because she was different than me, but her excellence and her compassion, those things impacted me greatly. But she passed away the year we became pastors. So all the questions I wanted to ask, and I felt like I was kind of robbed. But I look back, I was, it's hilarious. But she, just watching her as a role model, she was always so elegant and compassionate. But when I tried to act like her, I was not being me because I'm not the same, cut from the same cloth whatsoever. Right. So, of course, my mother and my grandmother, they imparted many things to me. But as far as women of God, I look to for whether they know they're my mentor or not, I always say Dee Dee Cooley. Okay. She taught me piano before she was Dee Dee Cooley. And then just watching her passion and zeal and steadfastness and being willing to walk away from relationships or turn down invitations to this and that based on her conviction or values, the value of knowing that your face on a flyer is a certain endorsement of certain things, and to be mindful of that influence, that really impacted me. And another lady that I really look up to that has spoken into my life directly is Claudette Walker. I don't know if you know her, but she's an amazing woman of God who spoke to me in ways that gave me confidence to be comfortable in who I am and in my personality. But as far as just like a single individual, I don't have a single person.
Yeah. But I think all of us are kind of like a collage almost.
That's true.
We're just all, because we all have moved through life.
Yeah.
And even if you had these like what I call like blue chip sponsors, you know what I'm saying? You move to the other side of the country or you're evangelizing another state, you got to have kind of someone in that area. So we're all kind of this collage.
Right.
It's so beautiful how God does it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, that was an incredible conversation that we had. And the good news is it's only part of a conversation that we had. Rob and Shara Mckee were here doing some leadership and training with us and getting an opportunity to talk to them about things that they would have done differently or things that they would look at. You heard them already mention that they would have done DISC, which is a analysis and a survey that kind of charts your personality. And what I enjoy about the way they present it is I've never done well with the type A personality kind of thing or the alpha beta thing. And the reason in my opinion, that it hasn't went well for me is that much of that type of naming people or setting them up as something kind of can be used as a microaggression. I've heard people say, I'm type A, and as if anybody who's not like them can't be a leader or can't be successful. And so what I can appreciate about Rob and Shara Mckee's version of what they were introducing is that in every category, there is somebody who has done something incredible. And so you don't get this sense that, well, if you're this type of person, then you're going to be a great leader. And if you're not that type of person, well, then you're just not the type that can be a leader. This really resonates with me. And the reason it resonates with me is because I've talked about it before. Leadership's styles and leadership methodology that is introverted, and introverts can be great leaders, where in the past I think people thought you had to be this outgoing, extroverted, domineering type A personality in order to be a very good leader. And what I can appreciate with the way they were presenting it is it shows you that, yes, there are D types or figures that are successful, like they name it out, like, Oprah Winfrey would be a D type. But then in the I, there's several others that are brilliantly just people person, type. But then you have in the S, you have Nelson Mandela, and in the C category, you have Bill Gates. And then, so it's helpful to understand that, like as a D personality, you may have, like, for instance, we just heard Rob is D. Shara would be I, or Jeff Arnold would be an I type. But, and so people think, well, that's, the success model. But when you get into those who are safe and security, you find people like Merle Ewing or Brother Kilgore, highly respected people. And you get into C categories, you find people that are successful there. So at no point are you just not needed or you're not relevant because you're not this domineering type. And so I really appreciate the inclusivity of it that brings everybody to the table, because like I'm a D, but I need S's and C types in my life because they're what put legs or feet on my vision. If it wasn't for them, then I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be able to accomplish what I'm doing. So the good thing is I'm looking forward to you hearing the rest of the comments and the interview that we did with them. If you have questions or comments, feel free to text or email us and talk to us about it, because it is a fascinating conversation that you can actually find a way to join together those things. So be tuned in for part 2 of this interview, and looking forward to picking up where we left off.